Difficult decision, difficult day, but this morning I met with Pete and let him know of our decision to relieve him of his duties. Pete came on to, or joined our organization on the front end of a pandemic right at in January of 2022. Coached our team through some extremely challenging times. Enjoyed great success with our team, playing in 6 playoff rounds, advancing to 2 conference finals. Wish Pete the best in his next post. I'm sure that he'll be quickly hired and working in the National Hockey League again this season, or next season. I'd also like to thank Steve Spott and Ryan McGill, who have also been relieved of their duties. Ryan, of course, was part of our original coaching staff and has been with the organization for 5 seasons. Steve came shortly after Peter. Both were really important members of our coaching staff. We will be retaining Ryan Craig and Misha Donskov. Misha has a really unique skill set and is now in just completed his 2nd year on our coaching staff. He's a really valuable member of the organization. And with Ryan Craig, we've got a real good young coach that gets better every year and will be really important for our team moving forward. Goaltending coach Mike Rosati will have the opportunity to interview with the new head coach, and we'll have further decisions being made at that time. I wanted Mike to have the opportunity to meet with the new head coach. I met with all coaches this morning and went through this with them. With respect to the process of how we got to where we are today, I mentioned at year-end availability there'd be meetings between myself and Pete that would follow over the next couple of weeks. That's exactly what happened. I also had discussions with George McPhee. We deliberated on this long and hard. We did not make this decision quickly. And once George and I were aligned in terms of what we thought the best course of action would be, we met with our owner, Bill Foley, late last week. Bill offered his support to our decision. In terms of the why, it's here's where we're at as an organization right now. We had 3 very compressed seasons. I really felt as the season wound down, you could feel the fatigue that had gathered over time. We've got a 4.5 month off season, which I think is going to be extremely important for our group. We missed the playoffs, which is humbling for a team no matter what the reasons were for how that happened. And I think what it's going to give us is an opportunity in the fall to be incredibly rested, rehabbed, recharged, excited. And as we went through it, I felt that we could enhance that by having a new voice leading our team into next season. The decision was made based on next year. The decision was not made based on last year. I'm not going to be critical of Pete or point out specifics as to why this decision was made. I've got a lot of respect for Pete as a man. I've got a lot of respect for him as a coach. And again, these decisions are made for the future, and that's why we're here today to discuss this. Happy to take your questions. I think that covers my opening statement.
We'll open it up to questions and ask that you raise your hand, and we'll pass the mic around.
Thank you. Kelly, in your your press conference with us after the season, and there wasn't one press conference or availability this year where injuries weren't mentioned.
Yep.
Your players, your coaches, you, everybody. So I ask, a coach has no control over that.
Yep.
So is there anything else he could have done to save his job? Because the number one crux that you guys mentioned as the reason you weren't as good as you wanted to be, he can't control that.
I completely agree with that assessment, Ed. We've talked openly about the impact that the injuries had on our season. I say again, and maybe it's hard for people to understand because we're in the results business, but the decision is about next year. It's about starting with a fresh voice. It's about starting with a re-energized team. It's about having a group of players with something to prove, and that's the attitude that I want to take into next season. This was part of that.
Kelly, you mentioned, kind of having a fresh voice next year. What do you think that can do for this team, or what are you hoping that does for this team next year?
Well, it ties into what I've already mentioned. Again, we haven't had an off season like this one, and I don't think that we've ever been in need of one as much as we are right now with the different players that are rehabbing different injuries, with just the accumulative fatigue that we've had over 3 really compressed seasons, long playoff runs, and what have you. So I'm expecting a sense of excitement. I'm expecting guys being very anxious to get to training camp. I keep using the term, a mindset of something to prove. I touched on it in my opening statement about missing the playoffs being a humbling experience for a team. I think all of those things combined together to help to shape that attitude heading into the next season.
Go with Jesse, then Willie.
Hey, Kelly, what attributes or characteristics are you looking for in the next head coach?
Yeah, good question. We haven't put any work into who those candidates are yet. These were independent decisions, which the offseason allows you to do. The leadership, the bench management, the ability to communicate with players. All of the expected answers is what I would give you. I don't think that we're out to solve a deficiency we felt we had. We're gonna go through a process where we hire the best possible candidate we can hire, and bring him in here to lead our team.
Willie, then Danny.
Kelly, 5 years in, 2.5 years ago, you wanted to make a change. You were looking for a fresh voice, re-energize the team. Now you're talking about a fresh voice. As a general manager, is it bothersome that after 5 years you're looking for a third fresh voice to run a team that's been to the playoffs 4 of the 5 years, 3 conference finals, a Stanley Cup final?
Willie, it's a good question. You do what you believe in your heart to be the right thing. And I've said to you people different times, it's usually not the easiest thing. It would have been easy for us to march ahead. But I really felt there was an opportunity here to help our team with a change there. That's the bottom line. So, you trust your judgment as a manager. We went through a process where you evaluate the discussion and the decision based on any different number of parameters or talking points. But at the end of the process, it speaks to your judgment, and that was the decision that we felt was the right one.
Danny, then Ben, then Ken.
Kelly, Willie kind of asked my question already, so I guess I'll go ahead and add to that. I guess how important is this next hire for more of a long-term solution as someone who you feel like can lead this group going
Well,
forward?
we've had, I know where your question's coming from. We've played 5 seasons. I think we've had really good coaching 5 years. So that to me would be an objective, right? I think that Gerard did a good job in his time here. Pete did a good job in his time here. We expect that the next coach is going to do a real good job for us. We're going to try to do the best that we can to have the personnel for him to be successful. And I don't know exactly what you're asking. If you're wondering, is this guy going to work here for the next 5 years? I don't know that. I don't know who he is, let alone how long he's going to be here.
Kelly, you mentioned you guys haven't really started the process yet, but I guess what does that look like for you, this search? Obviously, last time Pete came in pretty quickly, so do you expect kind of a similar short turnaround, or do you have a lengthier timeline this time?
Yeah, it'll be lengthier, and again, I touched on it earlier. That's what the off season allows you to do. So we'll be thorough. We'll be thorough. We'll look at all the candidates that we can identify. We'll work with people in our organization that might have past affiliations with coaches or ideas. We'll solicit opinions from our pro staff, from our amateur staff that are people that are involved in the game at different levels. Obviously my own contacts, George McPhee, similarly, we'll identify who the candidates are and go through an interview process with them.
A couple weeks ago, you mentioned that the talks with Pete would be about like his vision, seeing if it matches up with you guys, and you mentioned that this is about looking forward. I'm just curious, how different do you want this team to
That's
play?
what happens when you don't put it up here, Steve. Hey, that's where it usually is. I could have answered it for you. Sorry, Jesse, I got distracted.
No worries. You mentioned 2 weeks ago that you wanted to talk with Pete to see his vision. You mentioned that this is a decision about the future. I'm curious, just how different do you want this hockey team to play? Is that part of this decision?
We had a lot of success with Pete. You know, I'm not going to stand here and be critical of Pete. I think he's a really good coach. He's a good man. He's a good friend. So that's not part of it today for me. It's about looking ahead, and I know I've said that a number of times. It's not a cop-out. It's genuinely the basis of how these decisions are made. That's how you arrive at it. Yeah, I don't have a lot more to offer on that, Jesse. I really don't. I understand the question, but I'm not trying to dodge it. But I just don't have a lot to offer. We met. We had lengthy meetings. I mean, I think Pete would tell you that we see things pretty similarly. I think consistently see things quite similarly.
Willie, then Ed, and Alan.
Kelly, the announcement came out at 9. Press conference started about 1. It's been about 4 hours. I'm not sure how it works. It's not like an application process, but I'm sure. Have agents or coaches in that 4-hour time, have you already heard from anybody?
I've been tied up with conversations with other people in our organization that I just haven't had. I haven't had the chance to do any of that. But no, I haven't, Willie, to this point.
Kelly, no matter what, it's 3 and 5 years. So how much do you and George also look in the mirror and say, this is part of us as well?
All these decisions reflect on us, Ed, and I'm proud to stand behind them. I don't have any trouble looking in the mirror with the decisions that we make or the things that we do. I don't have any trouble looking in the mirror and telling myself where I can be better. Also, I'm not above any of that. But as I touched on it with the earlier question, I believe we're doing the right thing. I believe it's the right decision. And when you believe that and you don't act on it, to me, that's poor management.
Go to Alan. Alan McCrimmon, sorry.
I know you keep on mentioning the fresh voice next season theme here. Can you be a little more specific on what exactly you want, how you want the team to play that they weren't showing this year? Do you want them faster, harder, more intense? I mean, can you give a little more detail on what you're looking for the coach to deliver, so there's some expectations on the table here?
Well, through 5 seasons, we've had stretches of great hockey. So I think we all know what it looks like when we play well. I mean, that's I think everybody knows. I think everybody wants the same thing. You want to have an offensive identity. You want to have depth up front. You want to play 4 lines, things that we didn't have an opportunity to do this year. I think we're really strong on defense. All of those things that you do in terms of your roster. And then, the coach's fingerprints certainly are going to go on style of play and that type of thing. But I think, without going into the weeds on it, you guys have watched, you've seen us, you know what we look like when we play well. And that's what we hope to get back to. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's a style of game that I think works for us and looks good on us. It's not unlike what you see from some of the other top teams. Like I think in the NHL, there's a lot of similarities. Sometimes it's not what you do; it's how you do it, right? I think that there's a lot of teams that look to do things quite similarly, but some teams do it better than others, right?
Ken and then Willie.
You just said that you don't think you're above kind of saying you need to be better. Do you have examples of places you think you can be better as management?
I'm not going to go into a full confession here, Ken. Just trust me that I evaluate my performance and I'm honest with myself.
Kelly, I'll ask you this with full respect to your position and the decisions you've made. You've said that you've stood by, you and George stand by your decisions,
Yep.
And that it's a matter of looking forward. But when the second decision doesn't work out, is there ever a time where you look back and maybe regret firing Gerard, or not at all?
Well, and maybe I should answer your question better, Ken. Yeah, we evaluate all the decisions that we make. We evaluate how they play out. I evaluate how I work with my amateur staff, my pro staff, how we run a meeting. Those are things that I constantly evaluate myself on. It's a fair question, and it's a question based on something I commented on, so I'd answer that probably more correctly. Willie, I don't know how you can say that Pete DeBoer's tenure in Vegas as the head coach of the hockey club was anything but successful. you know,
Well, it wasn't successful, I'm just saying he's fired, so I'm just curious if there was ever a time that you think to yourself, maybe we shouldn't have done that, that's all I said.
well, it's an easy answer for me, but I'm not going to go back in time and have those kind of discussions. But it's an easy answer for me.
Kelly, your first two coaches had NHL experience with obviously the expectations with this club. Do you think you need another coach with NHL experience, or would you be willing to go to a first-time coach?
We'll see. There's we're not, you know, pigeonholing ourselves into one category. You know, head guy, former player. There's good coaches that have varying backgrounds. We've had two good coaches. One guy was a former player. One guy wasn't. Both guys were effective at delivering their message. So we'll look at the candidates. I really I don't know at this point.
Go to Chris and David.
Kelly, I was just wondering, you mentioned the, you know, the COVID and the fatigue and the condensed seasons and all that. And I'm kind of thinking, and then you mentioned he was so successful, DeBoer. Did player personnel voices kind of lead to the start of today's decision?
The player, sorry?
Did players' voices kind of lead
Oh, the players
to the
themselves.
start?
The players
Yeah,
themselves?
the players themselves lead to
Yeah,
the start of
that's a
today's
good
season.
question. No, this is done outside of any discussions with players. I conduct exit meetings every year, like every general manager does, but it wasn't an expedition to find out what the coaches do well or don't do well. It was you know, about a lot of other different things. It's a decision that you know, ultimately came from me. Talked with George. George felt similarly to myself. We went to Bill, and here we are today. So I don't, you know, I don't want to suggest that it's easy. It's not. It's not easy. It's really hard to make these changes. You're talking about good people and good coaches, so it's not easy. But as I mentioned earlier, you do what you think's in the best interest of the organization. That's always your number one mandate, and that's what we think that we've done here today.
Go to David.
I thought you were doing something else.
Yeah, I know.
What the hell are you doing here?
I know. Let everybody else ask the questions first.
Yeah.
And then all right, I'll throw this
Are
out.
you as angry today?
Yeah, probably. But
Okay. Okay.
I'll be nice.
Okay.
Do you have a timeline on Robin? How much does the new coach kind of factor in with the goaltending and, you know, maybe his ability to work with the goaltenders and things like that, I guess. I'll leave it there.
This is the question with respect to his injury.
Yes.
Surgery went well, is what we know. I don't think they're going to know a timeline until we get, you know, probably a month into the rehab. Would be just a guess. That's not going to vary based on who the coach is or isn't. Just on, do you have any more on Robin? Because I've got some other injury news I wanted to get to. Okay. Mark Stone is been seeing consultants and meeting with doctors, meeting through our training staff. He's got another meeting tomorrow in LA. It appears quite likely that he'll have back surgery on Wednesday, and would be you know, available for training camp. It would be rehabbed over that period of time. And again, that's not 100% for certain, but it's certainly the most likely outcome at this time, which the reason I bring it up unsolicited is I think it's great news. I was hoping that would be what the solution might look like, and it's obviously something that our fans are interested in. And I know just from talking to Mark this morning, he was at the facility earlier with Jay. I sure think he's excited about this outcome also.
I wanted to ask about Ryan McGill. From the outside, he seemed very pivotal in the development of your young defensemen over the 5 years, whether it be Shea or Zach or Nick Hague. Just what went into that decision? It seems a little curious from the outside.
Yeah, that's a fair question, David. And you know, I've known Ryan probably 30 years, 25 for sure. I've known him as a head coach in the Western League for many, many years. It was my recommendation that Gerard meet with him when he was hired here initially. And I thought Gilly did a great job. I thought our D got better and better. And I think that that really, David, I would say it to you this way. we're making some changes. It's been 5 years with a similar group. I just felt that maybe it was the right way to go. I met with Ryan about it this morning. I got a ton of respect for Ryan as a person and of his work, but that was the feeling that I had.
Hey, Kelly. Sorry about the phone, by the way. As respect to the roster as it'll look like for opening night next year, you have a lot of hard decisions to make. You get CAC compliant, you got UFAs, you have RFAs. Could you speak to where things are at currently as you go through that process?
Yep. Yeah, well, we have time on our hands. We're 4 months, I think, today from training camp or thereabouts. And, all of those are really important aspects of the offseason of an NHL team. We've got work to do in some of those areas, and there's work to do that we want to do in some of those areas. That's, you didn't mention the amateur draft, which is a real focal point for the organization as well. So you work with, all your different, constituents of the organization to prepare for, each of those scenarios. We had a call yesterday with our pro staff. We've got meetings all next week with our amateur staff. Those are that's all ongoing. That's going to be things that we take care of here in the off season.
Move to Willie, and then we'll finish up with Brian.
Kelly, I know you said you've been busy all day and then the process gets started. The calls will come in, but from yours and George's standpoint, in two-part question, do you also recruit and go after candidates? And I'll just ask the question that's on everybody's mind: is Barry Trotz somebody that you'd be interested in talking to?
Well, I think that we'll identify the people that we are interested in, and I don't know if that'll be 8 names, 10 names, 6 names. I don't know that for sure. We'll look at a lot of names. There's going to be people that reach out to us, and we may include them as people that we're interested in, and there's going to be some real good people that reach out that we might not be interested in. But to speak to a specific candidate, as you've asked, it's just not the right time to have that discussion. We're going to start at 2:00 today. We'll get going on that.
Kelly, you talked about kind of being thorough in terms of this search, but is there a timeline that you're working with? As you mentioned, the draft's coming up. We've got some important dates on the calendar. How important is it to have a coach in place prior to those?
Not important at all. Yeah, you need to be reasonable. Person needs to move a family. Person needs to hire a staff. Needs to get set up. But in terms of preparation for amateur draft, free agency, any of those things, it's not essential. It may well be, but it's not. We're not bound by any dates, certainly here in the short term.
I'm sorry, are you doing a development camp this year?
Yes, we are. You going to be still working?
Unfortunately, I will not probably be.
Okay. Just asking for everybody else.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Throw it out there.
Yeah, we'll have our development camp. So what's the draft? Thursday, Friday. I believe our development camp will start on that Monday. So whatever that day is.